It's time for another legal talk here on eRadio with Hahn attorneys, joined today by Isabella Mazzone, Associate Attorney at the firm. And we're talking about peanut butter. Aflatoxins in the peanut butter. What do our South African laws say about this? Isabella, welcome back. It's been a while, hey?
I mean, has it been that long, Ian?
I don't know. I never hear your voice anymore. You don't call, you don't write.
No, Ian, you're being dramatic now. I feel like I speak to you every week.
I'm glad you think so.
Okay, I'll make it a bit more reoccurring than normal.
Okay, right.
I'll try my best.
So, Isabella, we recently had a national food safety product recall of peanut butter products here in South Africa. It involved various brands of peanut butter and products containing peanut butter. Which regulatory non-compliance caused this actual recall?
So, as we've spoken about many times before, we've got a very bizarre regulatory framework where it's quite segmented and there are different acts all over the place that apply to one product. But this specific recall was caused by a non-compliance with the regulation, which is under our Foodstuff, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act. And this regulation is called the R1145 regulation, which governs the tolerance for fungus-produced toxins that happen in foodstuffs. And it's quite a short regulation, but it's succinct. It says what it says and it means what it means. And in Regulation 2, it contains its restrictions. And in this restriction part of the regulation, it says that the following foodstuffs are hereby deemed to be contaminated, impure, or decayed. And they have quite a long list, but quite at the top of the list, they refer to peanuts. And they say peanuts intended for further processing, which contain more than 15 micrograms per kilogram of aflatoxin, and that is total aflatoxin. And then in the second point, they say all foodstuffs ready for human consumption, which contain more than 10 micrograms per kilogram of aflatoxin, of which aflatoxin B1 is more than 5 micrograms per kilogram. So obviously this is a whole lot of scientific conversation, microbiological conversation that not all normal people would even understand. But there are two types of aflatoxin. There's B1 and B2. And it's really important that these limits are complied with, because obviously more than these limits could result in health effects that are, not so great for a human.
I'm just wondering if they're not just a little, overprotective, because, or do you think there were actually people who had some effects from eating peanut butter in South Africa?
No, these limits are low because the actual consumption of the aflatoxin, based on various scientific reports, needs to be long-term consumption before you would even notice any kind of symptoms. Okay. I mean, if you want immediate symptoms, I think you would have had to consume kilos and kilos and kilos of the stuff. Okay. But at the rate in which normal people consume peanut butter, it would never have been a short-term symptom that you would have seen. Yeah.
Up until now, I didn't even know what an aflatoxin is.
No, a lot of people were like, toxins? What? Like, is that something you just add to the peanut butter? But it's not. I mean, it's a naturally occurring thing in most products,
Isabella, are there any other pieces of legislation relevant to issues like this?
Yes, so I think more importantly is always the overreaching act of the Foodstuffs Act, which we've spoken about before. And the Act itself says in Section 2 that there's a prohibition against the sale of products that contain or have been treated with a prohibited substance, which is not the case here. But what is the case here is where it contains a substance in greater measure than permitted by regulation, or in greater measure than permitted by regulation, or which does not comply with any standard of composition, strength, purity, or quality prescribed by regulation. So that would also be applicable. And or where the sale itself is prohibited by regulation. And then they go on further to say when they are guilty of an offense if they sell, manufacture, or import any foodstuff which is contaminated, impure, or decayed. Now, as you know, when we quoted the previous regulation, they stated that if they contain more than those limits, they are considered as contaminated, impure, or decayed. So that's how it links up with the Act. There's also another regulation under the Act, which is quite relevant as well. We have our R908 regulations, which deal with hazard analysis and critical control point systems. So that's a long term. We all just call it HACCP. And a HACCP system is a hazard analysis system where manufacturers identify and control hazards which are significant for food safety. So it's a food safety related regulation. And in that regulation, they actually say that no owner of a food handling enterprise, which would be a manufacturing facility, for example, is allowed to handle food without a HACCP system that is in place and without a valid HACCP certificate. So it's really important because when this recall happened, the NCC was asking for proof of a HACCP system and a valid certificate, which is really, really important because there's only very few products that actually require this kind of a certificate and HACCP system by law. There are only 3 sectors where it's required, and one of those sectors is, in fact, processors for groundnuts, which would be in peanut sorting or grading facilities or peanut butter manufacturers. So that's very specific to this product recall. And then lastly, we've always got our handy Consumer Protection Act and its various sections. And the more important sections to this recall was Section 55, which is the consumer's right to safe, good quality goods, where it states that every consumer has a right to receive goods that are of good quality, in good working order, and free of any defects. And there are various other rights there enacted. I'm not going to list all of them, but that was the relevant one to this recall. And then we also have Section 61, which deals with liability for damage caused by goods. And this one was really important because the reason being that importers, distributors, and retailers could be liable for this non-compliance, even if it wasn't their product, which is why all these products had to be removed from shelves and, following the instructions of the NCC, destroyed. So here it actually states that you're liable for any harm caused wholly or partly as a consequence of supplying any unsafe goods, a product failure, defect, or hazard of those goods, and so forth. So that it will be irrespective of whether the harm resulted from any negligence on part of the producer, importer, distributor, or retailer, as the case may be. Quite a broad regulation, and it says what it says and it means what it means. You may not supply any unsafe, defective, or hazardous goods to consumers. So those are the 3 other very important pieces of legislation that were dealing with the specific recall.
Very interesting. Lastly, where can we find more information on these recalls, Isabella?
So the main information portal for these recalls is in fact the National Consumer Commission's website, where you will find various news and media statements which they've released in relation to the different brands and products that are involved. And there they give, a more broader picture of what there is to say about the effects and what a consumer needs to do, such as just returning the product to the retailer and getting your refund. And then the actual brand owners or manufacturers on their websites, they are required to have information. So if you have a look at that, you will be able to find the information. And then also just our good old News 24, Business Tech, our newspapers and our social media warriors, you will find that information there as they've been quite widely reported Daily Maverick, just to name a few. There you will find information, but it mainly refers to the National Consumer Commission statements themselves. And yeah, I think there's also been quite a few TV and radio interviews about it as well. So it has been quite widely reported. I don't think there's a single person who doesn't know about this recall. It's been going on for 2 months. So yeah.
Excellent. Isabella Matsone, thank you so much once again for your time and your expertise, and we really appreciate it.
No problem, Ian. Thank you so much.
Are you or your business in trouble and struggling to find a solution? Call Hahn & Hahn Attorneys as we assist clients in finding solutions. We specialize in consumer and food law, commercial and construction law, forensic investigations and administrative law. Visit hahnlaw.co.za. That's HAHN. We assist clients nationwide. Hahn & Hahn Attorneys, because we care. Don't miss Legal Talk with Hahn & Hahn Attorneys, Wednesday mornings at 10 on eRadio.